With the state of today's economy, it is more important than ever to invest in products that last for years to come. As the seasons shift and get cooler, make sure your closet is stocked with durable layers that stand the test of time from American Giant. American Giant's clothes work harder and are wearable season after season. Their greatest hoodie ever made is made of the highest quality materials that are cut and sewn right here in the United States. So you're investing right back into your local community. Choosing American Giant means taking a stand for American manufacturing and hardworking Americans, something other mega corporations don't care about. From fleece to knit, all in a range of colors for versatile daily wear, American Giant delivers everyday pieces designed for everyday life. Feel the difference of quality made-to-last clothes from American Giant. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at american-giant.com with code STAPLE20.
As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. Today, I have on guest Caroline Tanis. Caroline is the lead financial advisor and founder of Tanis Financial Group, where she and her team focus on helping their clients build their desired lifestyle. She works primarily with highly ambitious women and their families to create a financial plan. Caroline helps her clients determine their goals and their future lifestyle in order to build a plan specific to them. Utilizing estate, retirement, trust, investment planning, and more, Caroline is able to bridge the gap between where her clients are now and where they want to get to. In addition, Caroline is an international speaker and best-selling author, empowering and educating women and their families around building wealth. In today's conversation, Caroline and I are speaking about compensation for employees. We're helping you see how benefits tie into your overall compensation plan, and that compensation is not simply the paycheck that you give employees. We are talking about how to determine if you are truly competitive in the marketplace and what to do if you're not in terms of total compensation, how that can hold you back, and what steps you can take so you can improve your position as your business continues to grow. So let's jump into the conversation and learn more about overall compensation for your employees. Hi, Caroline. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
I am so excited to be here. You and I have some amazing conversations always, so I am thrilled to keep one of our conversations going.
Yes, I am so excited. All right, before we jump into today's conversation, can you tell everybody about yourself?
Of course, I am Caroline Tanis. I am the founder of Tanis Financial Group, and I also run a YouTube and LinkedIn show called The Wealth Cafe, which I feel like is like my new baby in this world, along with I am a two-time best-selling author. And it was very exciting. Jamie was in book number two, Rise and Find. You can find it over on Amazon. Her story is incredible. And I do financial planning, which in the world that we live in has become a little bit of a taboo thing, right? The best way to clear a room is by telling people you are a financial advisor. However, I like to approach it a little differently, where I'm really taking the comprehensive approach of looking at someone's entire life. It's one thing to sit down and take a look and just say, great, let's go invest your money and go about your day. But I really focus on looking at everything from retirement, estate planning, education, and we talk about using financial planning to build your dream life. And I spend a lot of time primarily working with women and their families who work for private companies.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I think it's like one of those things when you said you can clear a room when you say you're a financial planner. I think so many people, well, let's be honest, it's a position where you have to sell in order to make a living. And so many people I hear that when they started in that industry, they just started with a whole list of like cold calling, cold calling, cold calling, and no one likes to really receive those calls and everything. And then when you meet someone, it's just like, okay, are they trying to sell me and get me to be their clients? And what if I'm not ready to move over yet? I don't even know who this person is, and I'm going to trust them with my money. And so I think that's like one of those things. It's like, what do you want when you're going to start a conversation with me? But I know like we've had plenty of conversations. They've just been great conversations where you're never trying to sell me directly and everything. So, I think it is one of those things that you are taking it in that completely different light. And then I think the other thing is, money is super important. Like we can't really live without it. We can't survive in today's society without it. But I feel like so many of us, especially those of us who aren't really probably using financial planners and advisors effectively, live in this scarcity mindset of I don't have enough. So how can I even invest? Like what money am I going to give you in order for you to be able to do something with it? Because I don't think I have enough. And I think it's like one of those things is when you do start working with a financial advisor and everything, you realize you do have stuff that you can invest and how it can work for you for the future and for even the current thing, and not always be kind of like scared of I don't have enough in order to be able to do something for myself with my money.
Which is something else that I like to do that's a little different is we all have what's called our money story, right? Which is how we grew up learning about money, talking about money, whether it was our parents or the environment. If you grew up, I have great grandparents, not great grandparents, just grandparents who had grown up during the Great Depression. That's where the great was coming from. And seeing the way that they would talk about money, manage money, it really impacted a lot of our family, just seeing the way. And so that is something when I'm working with a client is I want to understand what time period were they born, what was going on in their life, and what type of situation did they grow up into to understand where, if they have a scarcity mindset, where's it coming from? And we talk through, training some of that and how to shape and adjust some of their risk tolerance and their expectations. Because it is, and especially with women, we typically step back and are a little more timid when it comes to investing in the market. It's, there's statistics around it that I don't have off the top of my head, but and it's a way we miss out on a lot of wealth. So I'm always trying to encourage and empower women. I'm like, this is a great way to build wealth for your family, to make sure that we are creating a legacy here. And that's something I like to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up something interesting. And, for those listening, this will eventually tie back to employees and hiring and everything. I promise this isn't just a conversation about why you should invest your dollars and everything, but you bring up the point about women and wealth. And, obviously we are not that far off from, a lot of us probably even still have parents where the majority of our parents our moms were stay-at-home moms. They didn't have careers, or they had careers that then they left once they had kids, and maybe they went back after, we left the house. So we're not that far away from women not really having a lot of their own wealth because it was so attached to having a partner. We're not that far off from women not really being able to make choices and investments and stuff because the laws just prevented things like from getting a credit card to being able to make certain decisions and everything without a man co-signing you. So there's a lot of that as you talk about that, those stories and the things that shape us. Like those things are still there. We're hearing those things, we're seeing those things. And then it's even, as we get married and we have kids, our wealth is then just tied so much in with our family. And kind of a lot of times, I know even for me, like, you're the giver, you're that person that's thinking about that big picture, that overall it's like, okay, I need to make sure my kids can go to summer camps and after school programs and daycares and all these things. And we're just thinking so much about how do I support my family day to day versus that kind of big picture, that long thing. And, there is still a lot of the statistics out there and everything that women make less money. And sometimes it's not necessarily like, I think sometimes people get confused where they're just like, oh, if you not making less money for the same job title, it's sometimes women just make less money because we have to make choices around our family and things like that, which holds us back in our career. So our earning potential is less because we make choices for others. And I think that kind of ties into all that stuff is then it's like, how can I invest when I have to do other stuff with my money? Or it's not my money because it's my family's money.
Yeah, and that's when I really try. So much of the work that I do is, I call it therapy, like financial therapy, and we sit down, and every couple has such a different dynamic, whether it's, nope, this is my money, this is their money, oh, this is one big pot for the family. Everyone has really different dynamics. So that goes back to kind of the money story of unpacking and understanding how every individual and then also how every couple works. And so some people, they come together and you're now blending those two stories. But it's also interesting going back to, and this ties into the compensation portion of things, is that especially for women, if they took that career break and they stepped out of the workforce, they're not coming back in at, if when you do the side by side, right? Let's say you have a man who is continuing his career and you have a woman who stepped out of the career for 5 to 7 years. So not only now is she re-entering 5 to 7 years later when the industry may have changed, you also had a man who was continuing to grow his career, his compensation, his network, things that are even, the tangibles outside of compensation that we don't measure or think about as much, while a woman may have stepped away for that time. And the compounding effects of that we are really seeing when it comes to women building wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about compensation. So this is a topic I have with the small business owners I work with all the time. And I know, like, part of the reason why I invited you on the podcast was because you'd put it out there, like kind of telling other people that are employees, like to think of your overall compensation.
Yeah.
And let's talk about, like, just break it down of what is compensation? Because so much of times we think of it as our salary, our hourly pay, depending on what type of position you're in. But that's not it.
It's interesting how many people, so at the start of a financial plan, we go through everything, right? To get the picture of where are we starting right now. So big part of that is talking about someone's, I always say, compensation. And so somebody will rattle off to me, they'll be like, oh, I get this salary and this bonus. So all in, I make whatever the total of those two are. Number one, that's not your total compensation. And number two, you cannot be looping together your salary and your bonus because those are taxed at two different rates. So somebody will sit here and tell me, oh, I make X, Y, and Z. No, you don't, because by the time you actually take that home, it's not really what you're making. The other part of that is compensation is so much bigger. And I noticed this too. I was working with some clients who are business owners, and they were talking about wanting to bring on a new employee. And I said, okay. And they told me, they were like, here's what we're going to pay them. And I was like, great. That's not their total compensation. That's just what you're going to pay them. Compensation is when you start to add in 401k match. Do they have stock options? You can even go as far, really, for total compensation. I previously worked at one of the largest banks in the US, and we had things like transit programs because we were all commuting into Manhattan. We had wellness stipends for gym memberships. That's your total compensation. Now, when you use total compensation in your life and look at that full picture, you're going to include different parts of it. Like if you're jumping from one job to the next, you might not be sitting here and being like, well, my job, my current role gives me free snacks. So therefore, that part of my compensation, no, you're going to look at a lot of the higher level things, but it's so much more than just a salary or a salary and a bonus.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I have this conversation all the time with small business owners because they're like, I'm paying competitively. And I'm like, well, no, no, you're not. Like your salary might look like it's competitive when you put it out there on a job board. But if you don't offer health insurance and someone else is paying 100% of the employees' health insurance, that is a big difference. One of those things where even kind of going into it, it's like, well, you're like, well, maybe I do have a basic health insurance plan, but it has a huge deductible and they can go someplace else and they have a plan that doesn't have a deductible, or the company gives them part of the money towards that deductible into a health savings account. Like those things matter when it comes to what is that person actually getting out of working for you financially at the end of the day.
I'm also curious from your perspective, compensation fully, it's going to mean something different to every person. So, for example, if you have a young person who's sitting here who's perfectly healthy and they may not care about the health insurance, but you may have somebody who has different health needs who's going to look at that and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't afford to make this jump. Like my medical expenses will be insane." How do you then help navigate business owners through that moment?
Yeah, so I think it's just pointing the picture of the reality. Like, what is it? So for first off, we need to put stuff on the job posting so people understand what are the benefits and talk about that. Especially if it really matters to someone, they're probably going to bring it up in the first interview. If health insurance really matters, because let's say they know they're on medication, they know there's something going on where health insurance is a big cost thing for them if they don't have a good plan, that candidate is going to bring it up. So you need to be prepared to have those conversations. There are candidates that are perfect candidates for your opening that you will never be able to hire because your compensation package does not match what they need.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's also one of those things that's like, well, people will be like, but my job's wonderful. My company's wonderful. And it's just like, none of that matters if a person can't afford to work for you. And
Yeah.
we have to look at it that way. It's about affording to work with you. And you have to say, yes, there are times where I can't afford to hire my idea candidate. And also use that as how can I better my business? So in the future, I can afford my idea candidate and get out of this mindset of I'm a small business, therefore I can never afford to offer these benefits.
It's interesting to breaking down the idea of benefits. Some of the benefits, then, if I start to ask, I also do a lot of corporate speaking. So I'll go into companies and I'll educate and I weave in a lot of the different benefits and perks that employees are offered. And it's funny, a lot of companies will be so excited to be like, we offer X, Y, and Z. And I just sit there and I'll talk about it because the company wants me to and they're paying me. I'll talk about it when I present to the employees, and you can just see people in the crowd laughing. Like no one cares about certain benefits. But meanwhile, this company is sitting here being like, this is fantastic. We're offering this. And so it's interesting to see what every person prioritizes. And you're right. Like certain people are going to be attracted to certain companies because they're offering, different benefits that are really important to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. There are things where people go to list like their benefits and I'm working with clients and I'm just like, really? You consider that a benefit? Like, no one, okay, offering coffee at work is great, but I can almost guarantee you no one is picking their next place of employment
Yeah.
because coffee is offered in the break room. Yeah, like maybe there's one or two people out there, but people are not, because you know what happens at the end of the day, either they're bringing in their own coffee, or if
Mhm.
they're really a person that drinks a lot of coffee throughout the day, they're probably going to bring in a coffee maker for themselves to sit at the desk. And especially nowadays that we are in very remote friendly environments for most places of work, or environments where people are working hybrid, even if they're not fully remote, no one cares. Well, I can't say no one cares, but a lot of people don't care about those in office benefits that companies like to talk about all the time. Like I can't tell you how many people will say, yeah, my organization spent all this money to put like pool tables and foosball tables into a break room that never get used.
Mm-hmm. It's funny too for seeing, it's like, okay, I've also never had somebody who, a lot of clients will come to me if they're contemplating leaving another job and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm offered this versus this, like stock versus bonus or, whatever it might be. No one has ever sat down and said to me, well, Caroline, this new company, they offer happy hours once a month. Like, can you imagine? Like, nobody is sitting there. Yes, it's great to build company culture, and I think that feeds into it, but there's different ways to do it. And it's interesting you brought up the point about hybrid work. And that's, I think, a benefit too that people aren't talking about enough is having work flexibility and also some of that, I know JP Morgan just is instilling this 5 days back to work. And so that is changing because that's now added expenses back into their employees' monthly expenses that they're now going to have to think about in cash flow. And people forget that being able to be flexible or work from home is a perk and a benefit.
Yeah. And there's a cost to going back to the office. Like I worked from home for years. I had my home office, and just this last May, I decided to get an office outside of the home. I'm like, I'm ready. I just need to get out of the office or get out of the house for parts of the day and like all this stuff. And I was forgetting that means I have to plan lunch every day. And it's completely different to go to my refrigerator and grab some leftovers or make myself a quick sandwich in between meetings and actually packing and planning a lunch and making sure I have the ingredients and then possibly running out and getting lunch if I didn't have time to get something. And it's just this like little thing where it's just like, oh, wow, those things add up. It's the clothing. Like, it might be professional on top, but wearing comfy stuff on the bottom. Now I have to worry about shoes. I have to worry about pants. I have to worry about like so many things that I didn't necessarily have to worry about. And so, and also the commuting costs, like gas, like all these things. Someplace you have to pay for parking. Like there's all these costs that go into going into an office that you didn't have to worry about when you were at home.
And don't get me wrong, like I'm a fan of the in office culture. I think there's a lot of things that I've had interns for the past couple of years, and there are some things I just can't teach them that they can't learn without watching me, like certain behaviors and ways to answer the phone. But I do think that it's number one, a benefit that these employers need to consider is having this flexibility. Maybe it's not all the time, but rather than, hey, this person has a doctor's appointment, so therefore they need to take a sick or a vacation day, let them take the doctor's appointment, let them work from home because it's more beneficial for everybody to keep the team running. And, it creates the transparency of like, hey, I have a doctor's appointment. I'll be back on in 2 hours. I'll see you then, and let them work at night. And also, too, these companies need to give people grace in you're now coming back 5 days a week. You now have all these added costs. You're now exhausted. I'm in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. So I always think of I used to do the commute from New Jersey into Manhattan, and it's grueling. So giving, I think, people that grace, it might not be a direct compensation or benefit, but having that culture around it, you're also going to attract a different level of employee.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things like, I know this doesn't work for all ages, but once your kids hit a certain age, if you're working from home, you don't have to worry about after school programs because you can go pick them up from school. The kids can come home and they can entertain themselves while you finish up your workday. And maybe you have to answer some questions or open some snacks, but you don't have to be on as a parent. Like when they're little kids, you need to be watching them every second.
Yeah.
So as soon as you have employees all go back to the office, what happens with childcare? Like there's all these additional costs that then get added to your plate. And so it's one of those things you kind of have to think of. There was something that you said where it's just kind of like the benefits to the organization. So if someone asks me what is the ideal work environment, I think it's a flexible hybrid environment. I do think there's things that you need to be in the office for that learning, for that interaction, for building that company culture. I think there's things with being around people is completely different than working 100% remotely. Can you function 100% remotely? Yes. But if you're like wondering what is that idea thing between 100% remote and back in office, I think a flexible hybrid work environment is the best for companies that are in a place where they can do that. But thinking about just sometimes those benefits and things that they look like they're giving something to the employee, which they are, but also benefit the organization, is sometimes I was just recently listening to, I was interviewing a candidate who is interviewing for an HR position. And we asked about like a policy they recently implemented. And one of the things they realized was, especially in a remote environment, their employees weren't taking their vacation because it's like, well, I can travel to
Mhm.
go see my family and I can work on a Friday, then have Saturday, Sunday with my family, and it's all good. Like I don't need to take my vacation time. Well,
Yeah.
what happens when your employees aren't taking their vacation time? You still owe the employee that vacation time and money, so they leave the organization and you have all this money that you have to pay out.
Yeah.
Also, your employees really aren't taking a break, so they're not refreshing themselves. They're not stepping away with like they really should. They're kind of go 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 all the time, which can decrease the quality of their work. So they
Right.
implemented this policy that if you take a full week of vacation, so 5 days in a row vacation, you get a $500 stipend to spend towards your vacation.
Wow.
And so for the company's spending more money to get their employees to actually use their vacation. And I know some businesses are like, but I don't want my employees to use their vacation because then they're not here doing work.
Hmm.
But vacations do help people refresh. They can put out
Yeah.
better quality work and all those things. And if you have a vacation policy, like I said, you have to pay out that vacation time one way or another. You want your employees to use their vacation because it's actually better for your books when they use it. So they realized that they were actually saving money by paying employees to use their vacation, and they were having better quality work from their employees in the long run.
And I think we forget with the remote culture that came as a result really of the pandemic was it's changed our lives forever, right? And the way we work and sped up the rate we use technology in, I think, fantastic ways. But it also is like you make a good point, and so did the candidate, that when you're not fully off. And I see people, and even myself, I'm like, oh well, I'm somewhere and there's a time change, so I can go sit at a coffee shop for 4 hours and not sleep and not rest. And then you come back from your vacation and you're like, I feel like I never left. And the quality of your work decreases. And it's interesting. I'm a huge reader. And so every book I read talks about the importance of rest, the importance of refreshing. And we live in a society that's go, 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 but we're not robots. You can't just plug us in a supercharger for 20 minutes and we come back and we're going to work away. And I think companies that are providing the benefits to take care of their employees outside of work, whether it's wellness stipends, whether it's the vacation stipend you mentioned. I come in and I do the finance workshops too, because that's the number one stressor for employees. Taking care of employees outside of the workplace and also showing that you care outside of the 9 to 5 is what's going to attract different talent.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, I was just reminded of this one story we were talking about taking that time to rest. So I live in Florida. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. We got hit by back-to-back hurricanes this past fall. And the second hurricane, we were evacuating. And I was super, super busy that week. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to get done. And but then I had stuff on my calendar that I was looking at and I was like, does it need to get done this week or can it get pushed off? And at first I was like, well, I can do it. We are evacuating across the state. Like I will still have power. And I looked at it. I was like, I removed everything from my calendar from when I was like, if we lose power, because we were still in the path, even though we were in a safer spot. I was like, if we lose power, I'm going to at least cancel as much as I can on those days and put some holds, like let people know, like I might not have power. I might not be able to attend this. So we can either reschedule now or see how things go. But there was things like the day that we evacuated. So before the storm was actually coming in, that I was just like, I'm going to keep these meetings because I was like, why not? Like, what else am I doing? And then I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, I just
Mhm.
evacuated myself and my children from the path of a hurricane, traveled across the state. We drove at night so we wouldn't be stuck in a lot of traffic. I slept about maybe 4 hours, if even that. Like, I am exhausted and I am stressed out that I might not have a home to go home to because at that point in time, the eye of the hurricane path was going right over our house. And I was just like, why am I stressing myself out to do work when I should have the power to say, no, I need to take this time off and mentally rest. And I need to take the time off and spend it with my children and
Yeah.
everything and just say, no. And, it's some of those things, like you said, like we work, 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 work because we can. I could
Yep.
pick up my laptop and go work across the state. I could do this. And finally, it was just like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And you need to turn things off and you need to rest and you need to let your employees turn things off and rest.
And it's partly being a business owner. So from one business owner to another, I get it because you're sitting here and you're like, well, I could just set up my laptop and I can work from anywhere. And isn't this great? We're not meant to. And your kids will now forever remember, like, we were in this incredibly stressful situation. They're scared too, and they want your time and attention. And that is going to be so much more valuable. And business owners that are able to allow their employees, like the LA wildfires going on right now. I know plenty of people that are out there and they're like, hey, I'm sorry, this is delayed. And I'm like, I don't need you to apologize. I need you to go be with your family and take care of yourself first. Because if you also, there's a quote for that a lot of business coaches use, and they're like, the best thing that you can do for your clients is to be able to keep your lights on and to be able to keep yourself healthy and running. And it's that exact moment. Like the best thing that you can do for your employees is to support them. So then that way, when the time comes, they can support you. And we're all going to have that moment in our life when someone passes away, someone gets sick, something's going to happen, right? That's part of life. And it might not be now, it may not be with that person, but I believe that when you do the right things by people, it'll come back to you 10 times over. And giving your employees and even yourself that break of I'm gonna rest and I'm gonna spend time with my kids because they also are scared that they don't know if they have a home to go back to. All of this will still be here in a week or 2 weeks or a month.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just kind of like circling it back to some of the compensation things and things that we offer. It's like I think sometimes as a business owner, we think about what do I lose by offering this benefit? And sometimes it's financial things. Sometimes it's like, how can I afford for and I need the help for someone to step out of my business for a day, 3 days, 5 days. And we think about what am I going to lose? And I really need to think we need to kind of flip that and say, what am I going to gain by offering this benefit? How
Yes.
can I say I'm a people focused business, but how can I be a people focused business if I don't allow my people to actually be people and I don't recognize that there's someone outside of working in my business? When it comes to people looking for those new opportunities, sometimes we don't realize the importance of benefits until we had to use them. So we might not understand the importance of, and I know small businesses, they don't have to abide by the family leave and stuff like that because they don't have enough employees. But until you've had a kid, you don't understand how important that is. And if you're one to attract women that are still of like childbearing age and they're like, wait, what do you mean you don't have any maternity leave policies and stuff set up? And then I might be expected to come back like pretty much right after like giving birth because you're not going to let me go because my job's not protected because it's not legally protected or things like that. So, or when it comes to bereavement leaves or things like that, or those really good health insurance plans, the people that are looking for them are people, either they're very proactive people or they're people that understand the importance of it. And I agree. There's a lot of small businesses that cannot afford some of the really good benefits. We cannot afford the really good healthcare because those larger companies get kind of like a discount per employee because they have so many employees on it. But there's still things that we can do. And so like I always encourage people, okay, you think you can't afford healthcare? Have you ever had a conversation with someone to actually understand what it would cost? And for yourself, how are you paying health insurance yourself? Maybe we're lucky enough that we have a spouse that has an employee sponsored plan or employer sponsored plan. So we're not thinking about it within our own business, but what happens if they no longer have that job and you are responsible for getting healthcare for yourself and your family? Have you looked into those options so you actually understand what it looks like? And then from kind of like your perspective and everything. If you have a client that says, I want to do this in the future, but I can't afford it today, what's the first thing you do? You start setting up plans of how can you afford this? So I think we need to do that for our business as well. And sometimes it is working with financial advisors and planners to say, I can't afford this right now, but help me see how I can afford it in the future.
And the biggest one I get around that is retirement. It's okay, I want to make sure I can set my employees up for retirement. And I also think we forget, you mentioned being a people first business, and remembering that there is something about, and this is more so once somebody is hired and if something happens and changes, that I'm using the scenario, but if you are doing the right thing by your employees and supporting them at where they are, they will never forget that. And you will have, I mean, we all know how costly it is to replace employees, train them, the whole 9 yards. And being able to support employees when they are going through things, is an added benefit that isn't talked about, that doesn't have maybe a price tag on it that we can sit down and calculate, like, here's how much it costs me to, be nice and let so and so take bereavement or let them take off after the LA wildfires. But it's almost invaluable because you will retain that person in a way that you would have never expected, and they are going to come back as a stronger employee.
Yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And you mentioned like retirement. That is a huge thing.
Mhm.
So Caroline, you mentioned that maybe some of the younger workforce doesn't necessarily care about your health insurance plan. They got that figured out. Some of the really younger workforce is possibly still on mom and dad's, because I think you can be up to like 26 and still be on your parents' healthcare plan or something like that now. So, you know, but they care about retirement. And that was actually something that really surprised me. I was working with a nonprofit, and that was the biggest thing that was impacting their retention and the employability of the youngest workforce was the retirement plan.
Interesting.
And I
Love
think
it.
so often we think like young people aren't focused on that yet, but we're also, it's a generation that is hearing their grandparents and sometimes their parents being stressed about retirement and seeing, you know, their retirement value going up and down with the Great Recession and like all these other things in there. And so they're seeing how it can be greatly impacted. So it's being put in them, start focusing on retirement as early as possible. So I think that is like, if you can't afford anything else, if you can't afford the health insurance plans, talk to a financial advisor and find out what retirement options are available as a small business for your employees, because there are other options other than just a 401k and things like that when you're a small business.
Yeah, even too, for it's the landscape has totally changed when it comes to healthcare too, that these employees will have other options, whether you said it's mom and dad, state insurance, whatever it might be. But retirement, especially too, because a lot of people aren't going to go out on their own to go and search for this. If you are able to provide that for them, even just putting them in front of the right people and saying, hey, we're going to have a conversation today about this, for your personal, for what the business is going to offer, it is invaluable. And especially too, you talked about the younger generation and their feelings on retirement. It's they're watching their parents who may not be able to afford to retire, like you said, or their grandparents who are still alive in their 90s and 100 and into their hundreds. And it's like, oh my gosh, what if I live that long? Like, do you know how much money I would have to save? And so they're starting to realize I need to save now, because if I'm going to be retired for 30 or 40 years, I need to build it up for as long as I can. And it's a change I love to see happening. Don't get me wrong, but it is on the forefront of a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And And so I think there's like all those things that we can look at to say, what is the good compensation plan that we can offer our employees? What does it look like? What can I afford? And what is going to cost you if you don't offer it, and cost you in like bigger ways? And working with someone, like working with the financial advisors, if you have someone that you currently work with, talking to that person to say, okay, they might not work in the small business space and being able to offer that, but they can probably refer you to someone else if that's not their area of expertise. And of course, if you don't have one, talk to Caroline and find out, what you can do, like where to start, so that way you can start planning your future and what's going to be best for your organization. And I think just the other thing, and then when it comes to overall compensation, because this is something I see small businesses do all the time, which I don't think they realize how much it hurts them. Because once again, they're thinking about saving temporary cost versus like the bigger picture,
Mhm.
is really think twice about delaying benefits. There's a lot of people that say, I want to make sure this employee works out before I have the cost of adding them to this plan or that plan, or that they have to be here 90 days before they can access healthcare. And that's a cost, especially if you're having an employee come from an organization where their employer is paying for their healthcare or paying a good part. And now it's going to be 90 days until they can get healthcare under you, which, yes, they can go on potentially their old companies like Cobra Plan and everything for that gap, but that can be costly if they know that they're going to have to use it. So that is a cost that people might say, if I have two offers on the table, I'm going to go with the one that gives me benefits without having to see my worth, because why are you hiring someone if you don't see their worth?
Absolutely. And supporting them, like we talked about earlier, supporting them outside of just the 9 to 5. How are you helping them develop and grow and stay healthy and reduce their stress? It is, I love how you framed it too, how it's you're relieving temporary costs. But what is the long term? You have to balance the long and the short term, which can be difficult. But that's when you have people like Jamie or myself who can come in and kind of provide guidance and say, okay, like what makes the most sense given your situation? And it's not a one size fits all. Unfortunately, every employer is different, and for every employee that they are trying to attract.
Yes, yes. All right, Caroline, we have to wrap up for today. So tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to reach out, my website is tanisfingroup.com. And if you are interested in learning more, you can apply for an intro call on there, or send me an email, caroline@tanisfingroup.com. And I am on LinkedIn, Caroline Tanis. And then there's a whole alphabet soup after my name. So if you see all these letters, that's me. And I am on Instagram @tanisfingroup. And then we have our YouTube show, which is The Wealth Cafe. And I'm going to have Jamie, she will include the link to her episode on the Wealth Cafe, which was fabulous, that everybody should give a listen to.
Yes, we'll definitely include that. And of course, once again, Caroline and I were co-authors for a book that just recently came out this last fall, Rise and Finds. So you can get it on Amazon, and I will include links in the show notes as well. So that book is really for the successful, ambitious working woman who is ready to kind of balance her entire life, that understands that work isn't everything, and wants to like really enjoy life. So it's so many different facets. So my section talks about delegation. Caroline's section, I think, talks about you kind of the finances and everything. And there's so many things in there because we're really looking at all parts of your life to make it so it's whole and you're enjoying it and you're happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Make sure you give it a read, and it is fantastic. And I'm not just saying that because I spearheaded it, but it really is. Everything that everyone shares is just a beautiful way to really round out your life.
Yes. All right. So, final question that I love to ask all my guests. We've all had leaders or managers that have stood out to us. Think of a leader or manager who has stood out to you and share one thing about them.
I love this question to begin with. And the first person who comes to mind, when I worked at one of the large banks in Manhattan, where I started my wealth management practice, I worked with another advisor at the time. And he just was fantastic. And I think what stood out to me the most, was the way he took the time to teach me things. And I know in such a fast-paced environment, and so many of us too, especially as business owners or leaders or whatever our role might be, it's so easy to just breeze through and say, nope, figure it out on your own. Nope, goodbye. But having somebody who took the time to teach me things step by step, even when it wasn't probably the most convenient in his life, it has made a world of a difference. And I think it also now has approached and changed how I teach others. So I am forever grateful for the impact that he had on me, and that I can also now have on future generations after me.
I think that's so important. It's actually one of the things that we hear a lot. Like, those great managers are the ones that take time with their team members.
Yeah.
And they're teaching. They're not just expecting you to know everything from day one and put you in a sink or swim situation. That they want the best out of you. So they're willing to help pull the best out of you and teach you what you don't know. So that way you can be successful for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're still friends to this day and still trade ideas and have conversations. And I think it's something that even if you do have team members that leave or go other places, you have no idea where that will lead to down the road. And I'm just so thankful that he invested the time in me, and I know it'll pay dividends for both of us.
Good. All right, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Are you ready to hire a new team member for your business, and you want to ensure you hire the person who can succeed in the role, make you happy, and positively impact your bottom line? Then let's talk and see how growing your team can help you master the art of hiring. Through bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance, you will learn how to attract candidates who have the passion you desire and the skills needed to succeed. At Growing Your Team, women entrepreneurs and leaders work with us to help them expand their unique businesses by teaching them how to hire like a pro. Let's connect and see how we can help you. Send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. That's Jamie, Jamie, @growingyourteam.com, or head on over to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word, and let's talk about how you can become a confident leader who hires right every single time.